Jonathon Adams, it's an honor to welcome you as Early Music Vancouver's first artist in residence. It's an honor for the beautiful and powerful singing voice that you have, but also for your voice as an Indigenous artist, as a leader in these very difficult times, and as a very wonderful communicator. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Suzie.
I want to ask you if you have anything in particular that you wish to achieve with the residency.
Well, having the opportunity to sing such wonderful music from a variety of backgrounds is such a pleasure, just to begin with. And I think one of my goals for the residency is to communicate my love of music that comes from a wide variety of sources, culturally and from different times and different places, and to welcome in the Indigenous community to the work of Early Music Vancouver, so that they can share in this wide array of historical musics that I've come to love so much.
Yes, and I asked you to be artist in residence because you submitted so many interesting programs. There were actually too many.
Yeah,
I had
right.
to choose. So why don't you tell us about some of them?
Well, I think the first program that I'm going to be singing is called Labyrinths, and that's about the music of Henry Purcell. It's based around the sacred songs of Henry Purcell. It also has other music from composers such as Jenkins, Finger, and a few other composers that are contemporary to Purcell. I'll be joined by Eric Milnes, Melisande Corriveau, and Suzie Napper. And the reason it's called Labyrinths is firstly because it's a word that is found in one of the songs that I'll be singing, but also because I wanted to program this recital around the idea of labyrinths of doubt and the way that we can all find ourselves in labyrinths of doubt in this lifetime, whether it's because of our faith, because of our circumstance, because of the politics surrounding us. So it proves to be a very interesting program.
And because of a pandemic.
Absolutely,
well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're also going to sing some Bach, which I know is a composer very dear to your heart.
Yeah.
So what will you be singing by Bach?
I'm going to be singing two cantatas by Bach with the Pacific Baroque Orchestra and Alexander Weimann. And those two cantatas are Ich habe genug and Ich will den Kreuzstab gerne tragen. So those are two of the main solo cantatas by Bach for bass voice. And they tell two stories of faith. And one of them is from the perspective of a man called Simeon. He's a biblical character. And at an old age, he finally gets the chance to meet Jesus, who's a child at the time. And he says, Ich habe genug. I've had enough. I'm ready for death, and I will meet it with joy. Ich will den Kreuzstab gerne tragen has a totally different vibe, but the music is wonderful, and it's a pleasure to sing.
You mentioned in your essay, your first essay for Early Music Vancouver, that when you sing, you have your ancestors singing with you and through you. And I know that well. For me, it's not actually people, but it's an old Acadian forest, and I feel all the trees singing with me. And I just wanted to know, are they there no matter what repertoire you're singing? And how do you reconcile some of your indigeneity with singing music that was composed during colonial times, like and white supremacy? Yeah. Composers who perhaps had nothing to do with it, but existed within those systems.
Right.
So how does that work for you?
That's a great question. I think I feel the presence of my ancestors more and more these days as I connect to my community, as I reconnect to land-based practices that my ancestors would have done, and But when I sing, there's something special that happens. There's an alchemical, there's a spiritual vision that's at play, and that I feel attracts the presence of my ancestors and transcestors, you know, the people who came before me and enabled me as a two-spirit to be welcomed into community, to be celebrated, to confess all of the things that I've lived. So I feel it whenever I'm singing, but I feel it especially when I get to sing a program like the Korean Métis songs that I'm going to sing in the festival with Suzie Napper and Mélisande Corriveau of Les Voix Humaines.
What language are these in, actually?
They're mostly in French and in a Cree dialect that's sort of, I don't want to say extinct because it's possible there are people still speaking it, but it's quite a remote dialect now. And these songs have their roots in 17th century France and even earlier, but they were brought over by settlers and then made into something quite different by the Métis between the 17th and 20th centuries.
Oh, that's interesting. I can't wait to hear that. You call yourself Two-Spirit, and I'd love to know what that means for you, because I think it can mean many different things.
Sure, yeah. And I think it's used in many different ways in our communities. It's sort of a pan-Indigenous term that was coined in the 70s or 80s, I believe, during a conference of many different nations from Turtle Island. But the reality, the history of what it means to be Two-Spirit is encapsulated within many different traditions of those nations, those disparate nations. And it basically is another gender identity, a non-binary gender identity. And we would have traditionally held ceremonial roles in community. In the Cree Nation, we were revered as medicine people and spiritual leaders. So it's an interesting job that I have as a storyteller, because it feels very much like a continuation of the practice of my ancestors and transcestors who were queer.
I just want to say that when you talk about your ancestors singing through you, I want to absolutely reassure you that we hear all of that in your singing. It is just so special to hear the way you communicate with words and your spirit really coming through everything that you do. I can't wait to hear the concerts. We're very happy to welcome you, and I hope you'll have an absolutely wonderful time in Vancouver. I know that we will.
Thank you so much, Suzie. Thank you.